prepare to the number 989898. That's prepare to 9898.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Rodney and Jen Wallner and the entire Wallner home selling team at Berkshire Hathaway. Call them today at 314-810-SOLD. 314-810-SOLD.
Bill O'Reilly here, and I'm warming up. Stand by for the O'Reilly Update Morning Edition. But first, if you own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles, listen up. Car Shield is a low-cost monthly vehicle protection plan now available to you. This protection plan is at an all-time low price. Please call 800-925-7584 for a free quote. Drivers who activate today will also receive free roadside assistance and towing at no additional cost. That is 800-925-7584 right now. On this Thursday, I've been thinking about Donald Trump's place in history because he is truly a unique politician. Yes, Grover Cleveland managed to win 2 non-consecutive terms in office, but that was largely because his immediate predecessor and opponent, President Benjamin Harrison, was the most boring man on earth at the time. To quote the late Don Rickles, when Ben opened his mouth, dust came out. President Trump, along with Andrew Jackson, are the only American chief executives who acted out. That is, they embraced startling candor that both helped and hurt them. It's easy to assess. Americans react emotionally to Donald Trump. He's loved and loathed, praised and condemned. His presence provokes fear in some quarters, adulation in others. Old Hickory's persona was similar. President Trump caught an enormous break, having Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as opponents. Those two make Jimmy Carter look like a tower of power. Incredibly befuddled, Mr. Biden bestowed economic pain on the populace. Almost daily, Kamala giggled her mindless assent to that. So now Donald Trump has a chance at greatness. That will take discipline and courage. Grover Cleveland bombed big in his second term. Trump might study that. But the president-elect does have a mandate: bring prosperity to working people and punish miscreants who impose corruption and social insanity on the country. If he does that, it'll be amazing. Back after this. Are you feeling the impact of the recent changes in the timeshare industry? My friends at Lone Star Transfer are the only company I trust to help you. For more than a decade, they have successfully helped over 20,000 owners get out of their timeshare with an A+ rating at the Better Business Bureau. Customer service is their priority. For a free consultation and a guaranteed solution, 855-551-7066 or go to LoneStarTransfer.com. That is the Morning O'Reilly Update. More analysis later on.
This hour, the Vic Porcelli Show, brought to you by Connor Roofing. You can count on Connor for all your roofing needs. Visit ConnorRoofing.com. That's CONNER Roofing.com. Vic Porcelli.
Come on, you're Italian. You understand.
Every day is a busy day all of a sudden.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
Tough and smart, and I love Italian, so, he's definitely Italian.
At least I have this show to come and talk about it and let some stuff up.
What kind of a show are you guys putting on here today?
The Vic Porcelli Show.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the day after Christmas Day. I am Bill Eigel. I'm filling in for Vic Porcelli today. We're going to have a good time. I've noticed this is the second show in a row where we've got the backups because everybody's enjoying their holiday. But I've been asked to fill in today. And one thing I can tell you about myself, folks, is I love to talk. I love to talk, and we've got a great lineup. We're going to get to Karen Cataline in just a second here. But I got to tell you, it's already been a great Christmas for the United States because it turns out, according to Donald Trump, the United States is going to be getting Greenland for Christmas. So I'm very excited about that. We have producer Jerome in the house. Jerome, please say hello. Merry Christmas, my friend.
It's great to see you again.
It's good to be seen, not viewed. So I'm very excited about that. But I tell you what, we've got so much to talk about. We're going to talk about Greenland. We're going to talk about the budget deal. So lots of politics coming up, but we're not going to go anywhere until we have a good conversation with our friend Karen Cataline, who is on the line right now. Karen, can you hear me?
I can, Bill. It's good to talk to you.
Well,
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I tell you, most people don't consider it a good thing to talk to me, but I
Why?
appreciate the sentiment.
Well, let's turn
Welcome.
the tables. Why?
What?
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well,
go
I
ahead.
don't know why. I don't know what's going on there. So, Karen,
Mm.
you're leading into the show today, coming out of the big holiday. Where are things at politically speaking in America right now? What do people need to know that's happening in politics right now?
Wow.
I know we're
That is
jumping
a
right in.
marvelously broad question. And I have like tons of show prep for what I filled in on Monday. So I could go there.
Nice.
Which is that the political climate has changed profoundly. You can feel it, you can see it everywhere you turn. You've got Trump already being presidential when he hasn't even been inaugurated yet, because we haven't had a president, not only for 4 years, but possibly longer. Well, for 4 years for sure, but certainly in the last year, he had too much dementia to run for a second term, but yet they left him in office for another how many months?
Oh my goodness.
5, 6. It's among the many hoaxes that they've been trying to perpetrate upon us by saying, "Oh, just don't believe your lying eyes. It's okay." He's the most astute. He's sharp as a tack. I mean, anybody who believes these people, this media, has got to be among the most gullible ever. Getting back, and I'm not going to give a long monologue because I like dialogue. It's really more fun. You can feel it not only in everything that is happening overseas and people sucking up to Trump, which is really hilarious, but the fact that everyday people are more cheerful, and it's as if a dark cloud has lifted from us, and it's really the large specter of communism that was facing this country in a way that you really could not overestimate. I'm done.
No, you're exactly right. I feel like there is a genuine sense that things are going to get better in our country with the election of Donald Trump. I mean, it's interesting. It's been very interesting to watch Donald Trump dominate the news cycle as the president-elect. No one even knows where Joe Biden is right now.
Nobody cares.
Nobody's even asking, right?
Nobody cares.
The country has had no problems moving on from Joe Biden in anticipation of Donald Trump taking over. And so the two big issues that Donald Trump has been weighing in on over the past week, the first is we had the Groundhog Day signing of a new budget spending resolution in the weekend before Christmas that's going to keep the government open for a few more months. And there was a lot of conversation about what that should look like. I've always been a person that speaks unequivocally that the government is spending way too much money, that we need to get back to balanced budgets as soon as possible. And that means right now. What was your takeaway when you looked at the latest budget crisis? I'm doing air quotes right now when I say crisis, because a government shutdown would only shut down the most unimportant parts of the government. If it actually came to pass. So what was your takeaway? What was the good, bad, and ugly of that budget deal that you saw last week?
Well, most of it was ugly. And 2 points, really. And that is, you always love it when somebody you were dating and was probably your worst date ever, or your worst relationship. And they say, just for that, I'm breaking up with you. And it's like when the government threatens to shut down, and there was this collective, I don't think everybody felt that way. Please shut it down. Please shut it down. Get off our backs for once. It's just hilarious. The bloated, not only is the government bloated, but the bloated sense of importance of these politicians and these bureaucrats to think that we are desperate for them.
Yes.
And assuming that we need them to breathe. No,
Yes.
They're suffocating us to death. And most people, thank God, knew that. And that's why they voted as they did. One other thought. See, I'm a lot better when I have a dialogue. When I do a monologue, it's like everything is related to everything else. And pretty soon I get so many ideas in my head, I can't think straight. I don't know if that happens to you.
Oh,
but
all the time. All the time.
yeah, it's just like, I need a mind map to go, okay, what is this and why is this related to 10 other things? No, the really important, one of the things I think is so important is that most people are talking about just dollars and cents. To me, dollars and cents is power. I mean, in government, that's what it is. And so I don't mind that Musk and Ramaswamy are going to call it government efficiency, which is hilarious. It's like military intelligence, but that we know inherently that it's not just dollars and cents, although that's important in the debt. What's important is that it's all about our liberty and our freedom. And the bigger this behemoth, if that's the way you pronounce it, gets, the less freedom we have as citizens. The more they censor what we say, the more corrupt they become in breaking, completely shredding the Constitution. The only way they can do that is to get big and cumbersome, or as the great Dennis Prager said, and I really say a prayer that he's going to get well and get back on the air. I haven't listened to him in ages, but I think of him and I hope he's doing well. He's said a lot of cool things, and one of them was, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. The bigger the citizen, the smaller the government.
I love it. I love it. Well, when they signed that deal, I feel like my first reaction when I heard that we were approaching another budget crisis and another spending deal, the first thing I did, because I've seen this play out the same way, there's a manufactured crisis, and then ultimately they decide to spend more money right before the end, is to roll my eyes. I roll my eyes because I feel like it's already been decided that we're going to spend a bunch more of our money, and now we're spending so much of our money. And look at it in terms, I always encourage folks to look at it in terms of what there's only two ways to objectively measure the size of government. One of those is in the lines of code that you and I have to follow in order to stay out of jail. And two, the number of dollars that are spent on our behalf by bureaucrats who in many situations, most situations, don't actually align with the needs of protection of rights that what we're looking for out of our government. So by both of those measures, government's bigger than it's ever been before. And in spite, no matter who's been in charge in Washington, D.C., that number gets bigger. And as government encroaches with more spending and more regulation, liberty, as you mentioned, is dying. So I rolled my eyes at the latest crisis. I think they're all manufactured, and I'm waiting for somebody to shake it up. And that may just happen with the election of Donald Trump. So high hopes.
God willing.
High hopes, right? High hopes.
God
okay.
willing.
All right. So
Yes.
the other big issue, I'm going to read you the tweet of the day that came out on Christmas Day yesterday from Donald J. Trump himself. And I want to get your reaction because a lot of folks, and you see, you already know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to read this to you in case any of our listeners have not heard of this tweet. It came out on Truth Social from Donald Trump yesterday. He says, Merry Christmas to all, including to the wonderful soldiers of China who are lovingly but illegally operating the Panama Canal, where we lost 38,000 people in its building 110 years ago. Always making certain that the United States puts billions of dollars in repair money, but will have absolutely nothing to say about anything. Also, to Governor Justin Trudeau of Canada, whose citizens' taxes are far too high, but if Canada was to become our 51st state, their taxes would be cut by more than 60%. Their businesses would immediately double in size, and they would be militarily protected like no other country anywhere in the world. Likewise, to the people of Greenland, which is needed by the United States for national security purposes, and who will want the U.S. to be there, and we will. So, America is getting Greenland for Christmas. That's how I take this. And
I don't.
What's your reaction to that?
I don't. Well, first off, it's fun. When commentators are asked questions, they always feel obligated to take an immediate position because we're all supposed to know stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, we're all watching this unfold before our very eyes together. And all I can say is, I can tell you what my hunch is, and I could be totally wrong. But I think he's playing laser tag with the media and with everyone. Not that there aren't good points in what he said, but we're watching the media go absolutely bonkers, which I don't know how they could go any more bonkers than they already are. But he's got them by the short and curlies. Can I say that?
Right.
Am I
Jeff
allowed
Allen
to
is
say
looking
that?
in the window right now to make sure that I'm only nodding my head and not saying anything. Yes.
Okay.
But I know what
Yeah.
the audience
Yeah.
knows. The audience knows,
I
Karen.
think they do. They are very astute. They're Vic Porcelli listeners. So of course they know.
Absolutely.
It's, I'm going to just wait and see. I mean, I got into arguments with people, some supposedly really smart people who believe what they want to believe. It's amazing. We're all living in different realities, at least, especially before this last election, in which many people had their hunches verified that they weren't in the minority, and they never had been. But the smart guy that I'm talking to, I heard him say it. I heard him say that this was going to be our last election, and I just have to say, well, what do you think about what their actions have actually shown as opposed to the words that they say? I don't know why he says things like that. And the fact is, if he's putting them on their heels, I'm not saying I don't believe him either. I'm saying that he's the ringleader and people are losing their minds and everybody's acting like cats chasing a laser beam.
Well, I tell you what, then let me just ask you this. If Greenland ever did become the 51st state, would you ever consider moving there and living there? I hear it's beautiful.
No. God, no. Because I learned early in my poor government education that Iceland is warmer than Greenland. Totally the opposite of what you think.
Oh,
right.
I didn't
This
realize
is what I
Iceland
heard.
was warmer.
Everybody
than
thinks
Greenland.
Iceland is in the Arctic Circle, and Greenland ought to be really, really beautiful springtime. And what I learned, and I've believed, and I think it's true, I did have a government education, is that Iceland, remember when Reagan went to Reykjavik and all that, is apparently a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And Greenland is horrifically freezing cold all the time. So,
okay. All right.
No.
So no, the
I
answer is no.
wouldn't.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate
like most
that.
women.
That's,
like most women.
We're going to
They
be
go
inviting
on and on, and then they answer the
We're
question.
going to be inviting folks to call in throughout the show this morning to see if they would like to live in Greenland if that becomes the next state. Karen, you've been fantastic for us this morning. How can people hear more about you? If people want to hear more, where can they go?
Well, they can hear me with Vic Porcelli Mondays and Thursdays. Shameless plug.
There you go. That's
So
what we're here
Mondays
for.
at 10:05 and Thursday at 9:05. They can go to my website, KarenCataline.com. It's KATALINE is my last name. Doesn't sound Jewish, but I am. So I wish you a great rest of your show. I had a good time too.
Awesome, Karen. Thanks so much. We'll look forward to talking to you again real soon. Happy New Year, and we will chat soon. Let's go.
Thank you.
Let's go, America.
Bye.
All right, that was Karen Cataline. We had a great time, and it's a great opening. So we talked about the issues that we're going to be focusing on over the next couple hours. One, who's going to be the next 51st state in America? Donald Trump obviously has some ideas about that. He could just be keeping, like Karen said, he just could be keeping the media on their heels, and they're losing their minds. But I think it was an early Christmas present to interim fill-in hosts just like myself that want to talk about things like Greenland becoming the 51st state. So we're going to talk about the budget issue. We've got Nate from Eric Burleson's office coming up. We're going to talk about the budget deal that was made, and then we're going to talk about whether or not Canada should be the 51st state. You are listening to News Talk STL. Folks, we're going to have a great morning. I'm Bill Eigel filling in for Vic Porcelli. And by the way, we'd love to hear from you. So throughout the show, if you'd like to call in and talk about what you think the 51st state ought to be, give us a holler here on the show, 314-912-1019. We'll be right back here in just a few minutes. We're going to talk about exactly what all your money is going to be spent on during the latest budget deal. Don't go away.
I'm not weird. You're weird. You guys are being so weird.
How dare you?
If you have a phone, you have a radio. Download the News Talk STL app.
Just a convenience on the phone.
And listen anytime, anywhere.
So let's review some of the things we've learned about money and you and your family that we learned from Chris Cooper at Serenity Wealth Management. Because who would have thought, right? When you're walking down the street and then you get hit by a bus and then you got long-term care to take care of. By the way, long-term care is expensive, okay? So you need tax-efficient solutions to make sure you still hold on to your money and have the lifestyle that you want and deserve after all this is over. All right. Because the medical care and medical care community is not cheap. They're good people, of course. They do what they do, but you want to keep your money after the whole thing is done. The government, forget it. They're not anything good, and they'll take your money through taxes. So leave your money to your children or the charity of your choice, and find out how by visiting SerenityNow.com. That's SerenityNow.com. Serenity Now with Chris Cooper.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors.
Serenity Now! Attention off-road enthusiasts. Iron Bear Customs has the strongest bumpers on the planet. Plus, brush guards, lift kits, and custom cages for all vehicles. Visit IronBearCustoms.com and mention Newstalk SDL for 10% off. Iron Bear Customs, built tough for the toughest terrain.
Discover Patriot Powder Coating, your family-owned specialist in Pacific. From small jobs to big projects, we got you covered. Visit our showroom or call 636-551-0377. Mention Newstalk SDL for 10% off.
Attention St. Charles, looking for a local spot that satisfies all your cravings? Mario's Donut Restaurant is your place to go for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. From mouth-watering sandwiches and omelets to delicious gyros, Mexican dishes, salads, and wraps, we've got it all. And don't forget our famous donuts. They're so good, they'll make your eyes glaze over. Dine in or carry out. Our friendly staff is ready to serve you with love and care. Mention News Talk STL when you visit. Call 636-447-4515 or visit mariosdonutrestaurant.com.
Sundays at 5 on News Talk STL.
All your hard-earned tax dollars and mine are going to fund illegal aliens who come across the border penniless, jobless, skillless, and they're given a cell phone, an identity, and a cash stipend every month.
Mark McCloskey on fire.
That beats your Social Security income if you should have the good nature to work your ass off your whole life and retire.
Mark McCloskey on fire. Sundays at 5 on News Talk STL. Brought to you in part by Modern Weapon Systems in Fenton. News, analysis, opinion.
Don't always agree, but in love listening to your radio station. This is tyrannical stuff they're doing.
Elections have consequences. This is 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Whoosh. Whoosh.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Vic Porcelli Show. I'm Bill Eigel filling in this beautiful, cool day after Christmas Day. It is 9:25 a.m. in St. Louis, and we are here at News Talk STL giving you news, analysis, and opinion. And I tell you what, as a guy that loves to chat, I'm very excited to be filling in for Vic today. Here with my producer, Jerome. Jerome, Merry Christmas, by the way.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Very belated Christmas.
Hopefully up for a good New Year as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have a good Christmas yesterday?
I actually celebrated Hanukkah with a friend of mine. I wasn't able to go back to Chicago to visit my family, unfortunately, but I got to experience what that was like. Because again, Christmas and Hanukkah have not lined up like this in quite a while. So
really,
it was interesting.
Oh, well, fantastic. So you hit the theme there, which is spending time with friends and family. I went to a family Christmas party yesterday. There was much rejoicing. There were a lot of small children there making far more noise than even I made to. So hopefully for all our listeners out there, whatever you did, I hope that you spent it with family and friends and really enjoyed and got a chance to reflect on the season and the reason for the season, our Savior Jesus. All right. But we're here. If you're listening to my voice right now, you're here to talk about politics, right? You're here to talk about politics. We've got time for Christmas later, but we're here to talk about politics. And of course, we had a good first segment with Karen Cataline, and she talked about all the good things that are happening, and the climate is changing in America with the election of Donald Trump. And of course, the big story in the past week in politics has been the contrived crisis of the budget in Washington, D.C., which is completely out of control, getting to a point where, oh my gosh, they had to pass another spending deal. And if you're like me, we hear about these spending deals every few months. And if you're like me, you start to roll your eyes at it because it seems like we have these crises that are manufactured. And I actually did some research on the federal budget and where we stand with that and what went into this budget deal, because I've been serving as a state senator from St. Charles County for the past 8 years. And so a lot of the focus that I've had for spending has been on Jefferson City. And we may talk about that a little bit later, but spending in Jefferson City has exploded over the past 8 years. And so for conservatives like myself that wants to see government actually be smaller, it's been very frustrating. But Jefferson City can only spend because of the fiscal mess in Washington, D.C. So one of the things that I always like to start whenever I'm doing a show, I always like to start with a quote that kind of sets the tone for the discussion that we'd like to have. And I do have a quote here from you, and it has to do with government spending and taxation. And the quote is this. It's from a guy by the name of Art Laffer. He is an economist, and he is a conservative. And he said this. He said, quote, "Government spending is taxation. When you look at this, I've never heard of a poor person spending himself into prosperity, let alone I've never heard of a poor person taxing himself into prosperity." And that's so true. The size and scope, when you say that you like smaller government, the biggest way that government influences your life is by taking more of your money and spending it. And so when that happens, we're getting further and further away from the America that we were promised and that we got to experience when we were kids into this new age of so much government that it makes way for different real crises like the COVID crisis, which I call the COVID crazy environment, which was actually made possible by just how big government was. Remember here in St. Louis County when we had Sam Page telling people how many folks they were allowed to have over for Thanksgiving dinner? That's what you get. That's the consequence of having too much big government. So what happened last week? Last week, the spending authority that the Congress failed to pass a annual budget by its constitutional deadline a few months ago. So they have to pass a series of continuing resolutions, which is basically the official term for Congress kicking the can down the road and not being able to come to a funding deal with the president. And you have to understand that when we were hearing that, oh my gosh, if they don't come up with a deal in the next 10 minutes last week, or we'll have a government shutdown, understand that when they say government shutdown, it doesn't mean that the government actually shuts down. All right. It doesn't mean that. Our naval ships still patrol the oceans in the event of a government shutdown. Social Security checks still are mailed to all recipients in the case of a government shutdown. The FBI, the Border Patrol, Coast Guard, the Postal Service, the Transportation Security Authority at the airport, and anybody that is deemed necessary to protect, quote, life and liberty stays operational even in the event of a government shutdown. So the shutdown, if it were to come to pass, heaven forbid a government shutdown would come to pass, only affects what the government refers to as non-essential positions and locations. Now, for most normal, rational people, it begs the natural question of, why do we ever have government operating non-essential positions? Jerome, do you know any non-essential positions that are actually so in reality important that we need to keep them going?
I think by definition, if something is non-essential, that means...
Doesn't that mean not important?
Yeah, we can probably cut the fat and, get back to the meat, right?
I feel like government's just laughing at us. They're like, if you don't let us take more of your money, we're going to get rid of the positions we don't actually need in the first place.
Oh, yes.
All right. So what does that actually mean? What are some of the non-essentials? Well, it would mean that there would be an impact to our national parks. I got to tell you, don't get me wrong. I love our national parks. I've been to many of them. They are gorgeous. They are great for family trips. But if it comes to trading our long-term liberty or shutting down the parks so these politicians can figure things out for a little while, I'm going to go with shutting down some of the parks. Here's the one. I actually found this online that drives me. You know what does stop in the event of a government shutdown? All audits from the Internal Revenue Service on personal financial statements come to a halt. So let me say that again. If the government shuts down, the IRS starts auditing you. I'm going to let some dead air go by for people to let that sink in. And the media and all the politicians are portraying a government shutdown as the worst thing in the world. The IRS stop auditing you. So that seems like a good thing to me. I don't know why we don't shut the IRS down in the first place. How bad is it? The fiscal budget in 2023 was $6.2 trillion. And that actually is a decrease of almost 9% from last year, but it's still 8% higher than our spending was in 2019. Remember, our spending ballooned and went out of control for the COVID crazy environment, which was really just an excuse by government to become bigger than it ever had been before. And so we are spending at near record levels, and we have a deficit, an annual deficit of $1.7 trillion a year, with national debt totaling $33 trillion. The interest alone that we pay on our debt is $1.1 trillion every single year. Now, why is this all important? Why? What is the actual risk? Why should we care? There's a lot of Democrats in Washington, D.C. that actually say, well, we could just print more of this money. Why are you worried about the debt, right? Here's why it's important. At some point, the people lending the America money, which could be actual citizens of America, it could be foreign countries, are going to lose confidence in our balance sheet as a country, and they will no longer be willing to lend us money, which means that the American dollar right now, which is what's known as the reserve currency of the planet, which means that other countries transact business in American dollars, will stop doing that, which will lower demand for dollars and will have a cascading effect of what's known as hyperinflation, which means that your dollars in your bank account will be able to purchase far, far less. And we've already had a problem with inflation here in America because of all this spending in the past couple of years. So if you don't like inflation, if you don't like how prices have been going up and ratcheting up over the past 3 or 4 years, all this government spending and this disaster is exactly what's going to make that much, much worse. And it will affect your household budget, all because these politicians in Jefferson City and Washington, D.C. cannot control themselves. We've got Nate Lucas coming up later this morning. He's from Congressman Eric Burleson's office. Now, Eric Burleson is one of the most conservative guys in the Congress today. And he actually, of our 8 U.S. congressmen from the state of Missouri, he was the only congressman that voted no on this budget deal. So I'm going to ask Nate, first of all, one of the interesting things that I was researching last night as I prepared for the show, I couldn't find out how much total money we're actually spending as a result of this deal. Like, there's nowhere you can find it. So if you can find how much money we're going to spend as a result of that budget deal between now and March 10th, please call in at 314-912-1019 and let me know, because I can't find it. That's the first question. Nate, if you're listening, that's the first question I'm going to ask you is, how much money are we spending between now and March 10th as a result of this budget deal that got done? And then we're going to find out, what does Donald Trump plan to do about it? He and both Elon Musk weighed in on this budget deal and said there was a lot of pork. Of course, there was a lot of pork, and encouraged people in Congress to reject it. They did. They came to a better solution. I'm using this air quotes again, better solution, but it still had 80 Republicans vote against it. So the Speaker, Mike Johnson, who is under a tremendous amount of pressure to find a deal and move the budget process forward, already has a defection of nearly a third of his caucus as we start heading towards March 10th. So Donald Trump is going to have a huge influence on what the finances of America looks like when he gets into his first year in the first 90 days of his second presidency. So how is that going to affect Missouri? We'll talk a little bit about Missouri finances later in the show. But I got to tell you, ultimately, I feel like these crises are contrived by the government, and it's put out by a government that has never been able to demonstrate any kind of fiscal restraint. And if you're like me, you roll your eyes at it because they always come to a deal at the last second. Okay, that is the primer on the budget here in America. When we come back, we're going to switch gears to talking about Donald Trump's idea for what could be the 51st state, the great state of Canada. It's going to be a great time. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions you'd like to weigh on this issue, give us a call here at News Talk 314-912-1019. I'm Bill Eigel. I'm filling in for Vic Porcelli today. December 26th, the day after Christmas. This is News Talk STL, news, analysis, and opinion. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I want to be clear. If you try anything to raise the cost of precision jobs, I will veto it.
The Vic Porcelli Show. Made in St. Louis for St. Louis. It's
Follow
News
us
Talk
on Rumble
STL.
at News Talk STL.
This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, 99.1 HD3 and newstalkstl.com. Colombo and Company.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays. Hope you're able to spend a little extra time with friends and family, and join us Thursday as we catch you up on all the latest news after the holiday.
Live and local weekdays at 2 on News Talk STL.
Dr. Randy Tobler here, and I know that when you're looking for a dentist, you have to make sure you choose a dental practice that's compatible with you and the needs of your family. Well, I'd like to tell you about my dentist, Dr. Dan Cusimano, and his partner, Megan Dwyer, and their team at Advanced Dentistry at St. Charles. The great team at Advanced Dentistry of St. Charles can accommodate all of your cosmetic and restorative needs because their passion is general dentistry. Implants, crowns, bridges, even dentures, that what you need the most is what they'll provide in a personalized, focused way. And they can provide therapeutic and cosmetic options like Botox and dermal fillers. Get to know them and all they have to offer by calling 636-978-0226 or visit them on the web at advanceddentistrynow.com. That's Dr. Daniel Cusimano and Dr. Megan Dwyer at Advanced Dentistry of St. Charles.
That's Advanced Dentistry Now, 636-978-0226. Or visit them on the web at advanceddentistrynow.com.
Winter's coming, and your family's comfort can't wait. Johnson Heating and Cooling, where family protects family. Owners Tracy and Sean Johnson don't just install equipment, they safeguard your home. From new construction to existing homes, we're your trusted experts in furnaces, air conditioners, and heat pumps. Don't risk dangerous gas leaks or unexpected breakdowns. Get your heating system professionally checked now. Call 636-332-4141 or visit johnson-heatingandcooling.com.
Looking for a top-quality tactical gear and expert advice? Look no further than Discount Tactical, your one-stop shop for all things firearms and self-defense. Located in the heart of Warrenton, we've been serving the community for 3 years with our friendly, professional, and knowledgeable staff. From custom AR builds and silencers to the largest selection of parts, we've got you covered. Self-defense weapons, SBRs, knives, ammo, custom holsters, weapon lights, optics, and body armor. Discount Tactical. Online at discounttacticalarmory.com or stop by today and gear up with confidence.
As you know, Vincent's is not just my favorite jeweler. Vincent's is my only jeweler. And I was in recently looking at lab-grown diamonds. These are not glass. They are actual diamonds, but they cost a fraction of a natural diamond. You can check them out at vincents.com, or better yet, see these lab-grown diamonds in person. You're going to be amazed at the beauty and the price. Vincent's Jewelers, vincentsjewelers.com.
This hour, the Vic Porcelli Show, brought to you by Connor Roofing. You can count on Connor for all your roofing needs. Visit ConnorRoofing.com. That's CONNER Roofing.com. You're listening to the Vic Porcelli Show. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, 99.1 HD3 and newstalkstl.com. Talk lines are open now at 314-912-1019.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Bill Eigel filling in for Vic Porcelli here at the Vic Porcelli Show. You're listening to News Talk STL, news, analysis, and opinion. Thank you so much for joining us on this cool day after Christmas in the St. Louis area. Hope you had a wonderful holiday season. And I tell you, I didn't know, Jerome, I didn't realize that Hanukkah lined up so closely with Christmas this year. So everybody was celebrating this week.
Yeah, it's a very rare occurrence. What I was told by the family that I celebrated with is that the last time was, I think, like 9 or 10 years ago, but there's only been about 5 times because of the way the holiday works out that it's actually aligned on the day of Christmas. And then, of course, today is the start of Kwanzaa. So happy Kwanzaa to everybody out there that celebrates that.
Hey, look at that. All right. Look, it's a very diverse show.
Yeah.
So I like it. All right. Here we go. So here's a question for the audience, for all you folks listening at home. There's a lot of debate about the possibility of a 51st state. And the Democrats, of course, when they think of a 51st state, they want to make Washington, D.C. the 51st state because that's going to guarantee them 2 more Democratic U.S. Senate seats. They're thinking about Puerto Rico, and they look at it through a very specific partisan lens of, we only want to accept folks if they share our ideology, our leftist lean, and bring them into the country. Well, Donald Trump tweeted out yesterday, and he's actually been talking about this for a couple weeks now, which I think that He is both. There's enough seriousness to it that people have to take it kind of seriously, but we have to kind of look at it through a different light. And that is, he keeps referring to the possibility of Canada being the 51st state. So here, first of all, I'm going to tell you up front, I am pro-American expansion. I'm pro-American expansion. If there are areas of the world that want to share in the American experiment and apply to become states, I generally think that's a good thing. All right. I generally think that's a good thing. I think that we have to be very wary of Democratic plans to only take those areas that they think match their leftist ideology. But in the broader context, let's talk a little bit about Canada becoming the 51st state. Jerome, what do you think about Canada as a 51st state? What's your initial reaction to that?
So I definitely think it's hilarious. And I think there are many Canadians out there that would be in favor of that. My thing, though, is once you're given statehood, you're given representation in the government. I question whether or not it would be better to make them a territory like we do with Puerto Rico than it would be to actually make them a state.
Right.
What do you think?
It may be better for their citizens to just stay as a territory and not actually take statehood, because you get certain tax benefits and you actually get non-voting members of Congress, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So like Puerto Rico actually has non-voting members of Congress above the 435 members. Canada, I don't know if you know this. It was quite a long time ago, more than 30 years ago. Canada almost broke up. And they actually had a national referendum of whether or not the province of Quebec would break off and form their own country.
Wow.
Yes, and this was when I was very young and I was a kid. I have to look up more about that vote, but the vote failed. Obviously, they stayed together as a country, but there was a conversation going on that had Quebec broken off, would the remaining provinces actually join up and become the latest states in America. That conversation kind of went away, and now here Donald Trump, even before he's installed in office, is talking about bringing them in. So let me kind of go through what would it actually mean if Canada became the 51st state. So let's talk about what would that mean? Whether you think it's a good idea or not, what would that mean? First of all, Canada right now is the second largest country by land mass at 3.8 million square miles. So it's bigger than America. It's the second largest country in the world. If you combined Canada's 3.8 million square miles with America's 3.4 million square miles, it would make the United States the largest country by land mass on the planet. Wow. Bigger than China, bigger than Russia. We would have over 7 million square miles. We'd have a population. Our population would increase by about 10%. Canada's population right now is about 38 million. What does that mean? Canada has a population roughly the equivalent size of California. So it would be like adding a California. If we added it all as one state, you would basically have another state that would be the size of California. The GDP of Canada is about 10% of America's as well. It's about 2.1 trillion, which is about the same as the state of New York. So you get the population the size of California, you get the GDP production of the size of the state of New York. And it's the demographics of Canada are actually pretty similar to America. The median household is of a Canadian household is about $68,000 a year. That's almost the exact same median household as the state of Pennsylvania. So very similar. By the way, to put that in perspective, I think Missouri's national median income is about $57,000, $58,000 per year. So very relatively close. Politics, political wise, it leans a little bit left. I think everybody knows that of the United States on social policies. If we reformed the United States Congress to include Canada, about 50 seats out of the 435 congressional seats would go to this new Canadian state. A state like Missouri would lose a seat. So we would lose one of our 10 seats in order to accommodate Canada in that. And it would, because of their basic leanings between left and right, it would actually add, as it stands right now, you'd probably be looking at a Democratic addition of a net of 5 or 6 seats. So that would be the political cost there.
Yeah, and that's what I was sort of worried about when people are talking about this. I mean, everyone wants to talk about the access to resources or building a highway to Alaska, but do we really want another California influencing our elections? Now, I have heard some people say, though, potentially they have, I believe, 10 provinces that could be split up and added as 10 individual states. Would that be a better solution? Or
well, so I think that question becomes when you talk about the U.S. Senate. So if you took it as one state, then of course they get 2 U.S. senators. You have 52 senators in that case. And I think that's probably a better solution. If you talk about adding 10 different Canadian states, so states 51 through 60, You're talking about giving them 20 Senate seats, all from a region that only has 10% of the population. Now, there were reasons that we had those kind of imbalances when the Great Compromise was signed in the first place, so that the small states could be protected. But I think that's much different than allowing that massive of that big of a voice for that relatively small population that we'd be taking in. I think that would make a transition much more difficult. So I think from a U.S. Senate perspective, yes, it'd be a big state. Maybe we divide it into 2 states, but I think that I think that you would have a real tough time taking it into 10 states. So you might be able to split into 2, put 4 states in there. So it's 10% of the Senate, 4 seats, roughly 10% of the Senate. But I don't think that you could do 10 territories. So. But you are going to have, either way, you're going to have about 50 seats get into Congress. And you mentioned the resources. Canada controls about 13% of the world's oil reserves, and they have 20% of the world's fresh water. So they have pretty significant reserves. And so there is an argument there that this would massively increase American natural resources, which we already have a lot of. But the North American continent, really the result of this would be that the North American continent would dominate global politics even further. I mean, America obviously is already the most powerful country on earth. It would dominate that much more over the other countries. And, you mentioned California, and we've had a lot of conversations about folks moving from California. And unfortunately, they're fleeing liberal policies, but then bringing them to places like, whether it's Missouri or Texas or Tennessee. I got to tell you, I'm a big believer that ultimately good ideas rule the day. And we are finding that even in blue states, which took a big lurch to the right in this most recent election, are starting to finally reject these crazy leftist big government policies. The introduction of a Canadian state into America, I think that process continues in those left-leaning areas of Canada. And so if you ask me, ultimately, if I had to say, if it were up to Bill Eigel, would I say yes or no? I would say yes. I think that there is a conversation that you have to have about how many states you let in. The optimum number is probably 2 states. You divide Canada into 2. And of course, both Canada and the U.S. would have to take a vote and approve that. We're not going to get into the city-county merger type discussion where you're going to have everybody vote on something that only affects other people. But I think that, if it passes a vote and Canada would be open to that and would like to take part in the American experiment, we would love to have America's attic become part of America. It's lovingly what I hear people to refer to it as. What do you think? Yes or no? Would you take Canada?
See, I'm thinking more from a strategic standpoint. It would be good to be able to expand the borders up there because, Greenland is actually close to the tip of Canada as well. I don't know. I just, the Canadians that I've interacted with, I've only been twice, and it's only been to Ontario and one of the neighboring provinces. And I would love to believe that once they get to experience what it's like to actually be an American, they would say, well, what have we been doing? We got to embrace this now. But I do feel that it still runs the risk of so many people are just, they don't want guns. They just gave up all their guns. The prime minister actually took them and I think gave them to Ukraine, and they don't seem to have a problem with that.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
They're very adamant. The ones that I've talked to, at least, they're very adamant about socialized healthcare. And now we know
that's not going to work out.
Their healthcare system actually offers euthanasia. If you there's a Canadian veteran that was suffering from PTSD and was trying to get an appointment and was having trouble booking the appointment. This is I think from a year or 2 ago. And so she called him up and said, hey, I'm having these issues. Can we please do something? I'm struggling. I'm a veteran. And they said, well, if you are not satisfied, we can put you on a list to be euthanized. And it made huge rounds and outrage. So I those are the things where I'm thinking, if they're not willing to vote against that, and then we let them hear, and then
so it sounds like they need a little American inspiration.
Yeah,
it might be good for them.
So maybe they should spend some time as a territory for a bit.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all. So they can get used to the idea of what America's all about.
Yeah, and then
this is why we call them America's attic.
Yes, but no, I think it makes some excellent points with that. And
so, are you a yes or a no? You had to decide right now. I'm putting you on the spot.
Man.
Yes or no? If there was a referendum today on whether or not we should let Canada in, would you vote yes or no? We ask the tough questions here in News Talk.
Okay, you know what? For America's sake, yes. Let's
do
it.
Oh, let's do it. Two. It's unanimous. Hey, if you're listening out there this morning on this day after Christmas, what do you think? Would you vote to allow Canada to become the 51st or the 52nd state? Give us a call right now. Let us know what you think. 314-912 1019. And I tell you, what's interesting to me is that Donald Trump, as the president-elect, is already getting attention from the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. He went down to Mar-a-Lago and tried to, I guess, make peace with Donald Trump. And that's when Donald Trump started referring to him as the governor of Canada. And now, this story is the story that keeps on giving in my mind, because we also found out that Donald Trump wants to make the great one, Wayne Gretzky, the ambassador to Canada.
Oh, yes.
I mean, this is great stuff, because what is Canada known for? Hockey, right? So he's going to make one of the greatest hockey players ever the ambassador to Canada. And by the way, apparently, according to the AP, Wayne Gretzky's wife is posting that she loves the idea. They're ready to serve. We're going to send Wayne Gretzky up there. I don't know. Maybe there's going to be subsidies for hockey youth. I don't know up there what we're going to go on, but we could have Wayne Gretzky's going to go up there, and he's going to bring us all together and start moving Canada. What do you think of Wayne Gretzky as the latest pick for the Trump administration?
That one actually came as a bit of a surprise to me. And again, with somebody like Trump, it's so hard to tell where they're actually serious and when they're trolling. But if he does anything as good as he did,
he trolls on Twitter? No way. No way.
No, never made a mean tweet in his life. But if he does to the relations between the U.S. and Canada what he did on the ice as a hockey player, I think that would be amazing. I think we could definitely export some of our freedoms and American ways to Canada through that. And I don't know much about his wife, but I mean, they can't be doing very much more worse than what Justin Trudeau is actually doing right now. So
yeah, I don't think Justin Trudeau would do well in the American political system. But maybe Canadians need a little bit more freedom, right? They need a little more freedom in their lives, and they could take part in the American experiment. And if you think about these ambassador positions are normally rewards for supporters of a administration from the campaign season, and they're kind of cush jobs. You get to go out and spend time in a country. But in this case, Donald Trump's generally, I think, in his own way, trying to determine who makes a good fit for the country of Canada that would make that population be able to relate to this person in any small way. And Wayne Gretzky, with a background in hockey, which is, hockey in Canada, that's like football in America.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely something I think that the people of Canada are going to be able to weigh in on and be more comfortable with, and we'll see what happens. I like the idea of bringing the American experiment. I'm a Theodore Roosevelt kind of guy. I'm pro expansion, and where we can, where folks are interested in sharing the American experiment, I think that's a great thing. So speaking of Theodore Roosevelt, when we come back, and the next segment of the day, I got a quote that I want to share with you from Theodore Roosevelt that talks about American expansion. And we're going to talk about other avenues from the tweet that keeps on giving from Donald Trump yesterday on Christmas Day about expanding America. Where are we going to go next? Maybe America could get Greenland for Christmas next year. I don't know. We're going to talk about that. We'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to call in and weigh in, don't be shy. Give us a call, 314-912-1019. The call lines are open. I'm Bill Eigel. I'm filling in for Vic Porcelli on this morning's Vic Porcelli Show. Merry belated Christmas today. If you're recovering, chat with us. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about where America is expanding next. You're listening to News Talk STL. We'll be right back.
If you're considering an annuity as part of your retirement plan, we need to talk. Hi, I'm Bob Stockdale, Senior Vice President Investments with the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel, and host of On the Money Saturday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL 1019. Annuities can be a useful tool for some retirement investors, but not all annuities are created equal. Every week, we meet clients who own complex annuities that don't suit their needs and, in some cases, actively undermine their retirement plan. Before you purchase an annuity, get a second opinion from the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel. Requesting a consultation is free of charge. To request a free consultation, contact us at clearpathinvesting.com. That's clearpathinvesting.com, or call us at 636-695-2650. That's clearpathinvesting.com or 636-695-2650. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member NYSE and SIPC.
In the fast-paced world of digital marketing, making connections is a challenge for any business.
But what if we told you there's a place where connections aren't just made, they're grown? Meet 2060 Digital, your premier Google partner and top-tier digital agency. We don't just follow trends, we set them. At 2060 Digital, we're not just another agency, we're your strategic partner. We dive deep into your challenges and develop solutions that drive measurable outcomes. Ready to elevate your digital presence with campaigns that connect? Google 2060 Digital today.
Here's some expert advice from McGuire Moving and Storage. If you have a home or business move coming up, you need to book now. Most moving companies are booked 6 to 8 weeks out. So call McGuire now, get an on-site estimate, set a date. McGuire has 85 years of experience and just won the Spire Quality Award. I can personally testify McGuire goes above and beyond to help the clients. McGuire Moving and Storage, McGuireMoving.com.
I occasionally have nerve discomfort in my hands, so the things I love to do
Let's play something, Grandma.
became difficult as I got older.
If you have occasional stabbing and burning in your hands and feet, try Nervive Nerve Relief. Nervive's clinically studied dose of alpha-lipoic acid reduces occasional nerve discomfort in as little as 7 days with continued daily use. Say yes to healthy nerves with Nervive Nerve Relief. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Larry Connors here, and I'm heading to southern Italy for a tour of the most beautiful coastline in the world, the Amalfi Coast. I want you to join me. We'll travel for 11 magical days with professionals from Conservative Tours. They're the best tour operators in Italy. Conservative Tours, an A+ rating with the BBB. $54.88 is your cost. That includes airfare from St. Louis, luxury hotels, dining events you'll remember for years. Call 888-733-9494 or go to Conservative.
HD3 Clay, K270BW Belfast, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
Power from townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. After hammering Hamas and Hezbollah, Israel now setting its sights on Houthi rebels based in Yemen. The Israeli military has attacked infrastructure used by the Iran-backed rebels, including port facilities. The Houthis have recently stepped up rocket attacks on Israel. Forecasters warn of the possibility of more severe weather for coastal California, where earlier this week a powerful storm collapsed part of the historic Santa Cruz Wharf.
Santa Cruz Mayor Fred Keeley says the city will focus on immediate response and cleanup efforts after high surf slammed the coast. A section at the end of the city's 110-year-old wharf collapsed into the Pacific Monday. Repairs to the wharf were reportedly delayed after an environmental and preservationist group's lawsuit delayed changes to the structure by several years. The San Francisco Chronicle reported that the city had planned to reinforce the wharf, but the proposal faced a lawsuit from the group Don't Morph the Wharf, which caused repairs to be delayed and also caused part of the project to be abandoned. Tasha Stevens reporting.
A 42-year-old man and a 26-year-old woman, victims of the latest surge of violence in New York City, both of them hospitalized. They were slashed by a knife-wielding attacker at Grand Central Station a couple of days ago. A 28-year-old suspect is in custody. Well, apparently it was a family feud. Phoenix police investigating a Christmas shooting at Sky Harbor Airport. It left 3 people wounded by gunfire. Another person was stabbed. Police say the evening shooting was related to a family dispute, happened at a restaurant outside the security checkpoints in Terminal 4. An adult female and 2 adult males were shot, leaving the female with injuries that police describe as life-threatening. Police say the 2 men were in stable condition. Stocks in the red this morning on Wall Street. The Dow is down 45 points, the NASDAQ Composite Index off 24, and the S&P trading 7 points lower. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Our nation's problems have been building for the past 50 years, and they're not going away overnight, which is why we must prepare now for a financial collapse that will affect the entire economy. The good news is there's an easy way to do that. Hi, I'm Dr. Ron Paul, and I believe everyone should consider a gold IRA from Birch Gold Group to diversify their IRA or 401k. Gold is a proven bedrock in almost every kind of economy. To learn more, get a free info kit from my trusted friends at Birch Gold by texting the word PREPARE to 989898. Don't wait until decades of government irresponsibility comes crashing down on your retirement. Get your free info kit on gold IRAs from the Birch Gold Group now. Text PREPARE to the number 989898. That's PREPARE to 989898.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Stifel, serving investors for over 130 years. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm meteorologist Leah Hill with your first alert forecast. When you head out early, a few of us are seeing these very small showers, and there's also some dense fog developing for places to the west. I don't expect the fog to be a widespread problem, but just watch for it if you are going to be out and about early today. Temperatures this afternoon under cloud cover will top out near 52 degrees. Watch for more rain to move in tonight. That continues through Friday, as well as rain chances into the weekend. And that's your first alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Leah Hill.
This hour, the Vic Porcelli Show, brought to you by Proctor Drapery Blinds and Shutters. Proctor, spelled like doctor. ProctorDrapery.com. Vic Porcelli.
Come on, you're Italian. You understand.
Every day is a busy day all of a sudden.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
Tough and smart, and I love Italian, so, he's definitely Italian.
At least I have this show to come and talk about it and let some stuff up.
What kind of a show are you guys putting on here today?
The Vic Porcelli Show.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Hey, good morning, everybody. You are listening to News Talk STL, the Vic Porcelli Show. But I'm Bill Eigel. I'm filling in for Vic today, and we're talking about politics at the national and the state level. And we've had an exciting morning because yesterday the gift I got from Donald Trump was his tweet that said we're going to annex Greenland and we're going to go after Canada as the 51st state. We're going to get the Panama Canal back. I'm just kidding. That's not what he said, but he did mention those things as possibilities. And we've been having a great time talking about it. We also talked about the near government shutdown. All right, everyone collectively roll your eyes because the government goes through this every so often and they seem to think that our lives are going to be absolutely terrible in the event that non-essential government functions in DC shuts down. But when that deal got passed to continue the spending for another few months, it passed with only 9 of the 10, or 7 of the 8. Oh, I lost my count there. I went to electoral votes for a moment right there. Whoa, man. 7 of the 8 congressmen from the great state of Missouri voted yes on that. 1 congressman voted no, and that congressman was Congressman Eric Burleson, a former colleague of mine in the Missouri State Senate. And to talk about all things Eric Burleson, we have on the line Nate Lucas, his local comms guy here in the state of Missouri. Nate, are you there?
I'm here. How are you, Bill?
Hey, I'm great, man. Merry Christmas. How are you?
Merry Christmas. I'm doing great. It's good to be back in the Midwest for a few days. Every once in a while you spend enough time in DC and you feel like you got to get the hell out of there. So,
all right.
As Eric frequently says, as a member of the House Freedom Caucus, that's the only meeting that he goes to throughout the week where he leaves and doesn't feel like he needs to take a shower afterwards. So,
fantastic. Well, hey, let me first cleanse your palate by to throw in your real curveball here since we just had Christmas. Tell me, what is, in your opinion, the greatest Christmas dinner meal? Is it roast turkey? Is it prime rib? What's your personal favorite?
Wow.
There you go. See, I'm cleansing the palate.
Okay.
You didn't see that one coming.
You
We're
really
cleansing the palate. So go ahead.
You know what? I'm pretty old school. You can't go wrong with give me beef tenderloin or
all right. That's a good one.
Tomahawk steak. I'm pretty simple.
Tomahawk steak.
Potatoes.
Did you say a tomahawk?
Yeah.
Tomahawk ribeye? Oh man, that sounds
Tomahawk
fantastic.
ribeye.
I love it. I tell you what, my wife makes a fantastic prime rib every Christmas, and I talk about it for days afterwards. So I just want to give a shout out to my wife, Amanda. She did a great job this year, and hopefully you had a great time with your family. But now that we've cleansed the palate, we can go back to politics. So your boss, Eric Burleson, he's a friend of mine. He voted no on the latest budget, quote unquote, crisis that unfolded last week. Tell me, what was the good, the bad, and the ugly as Congressman Burleson saw it of what happened with that budget package last week?
Sure. Well, Bill, I mean, I think, Eric, for one, he ran as a fiscal conservative. And so when he gets there, he's not going to abandon his constituents. A lot of politicians do that on a daily basis. Eric refuses to do that, which I think I'm a pretty genuine human being. When you look at the spending bill, when they dropped it, the rumors came out over the weekend that they were going to pack this thing with all sorts of pork. And the big enchilada was the healthcare reform, that they were trying to get rid of PBMs. And essentially, that bill comes out, and they never brought it to a vote on the floor, but it was 1,547 pages. And it began to make its circulation on social media. You got Elon Musk involved, who's saying, don't vote for this bill. If you vote for this bill, you're going to get primaried. And so the American people got a glimpse of how typical Washington, D.C. works in the shadows by coming out with this bill. And you would think out of a Republican-led House that you could at least eliminate much of the pork that was included in it. So that bill got shot down. Then you fast forward 24 hours and they say, look, now the bill that we're going to vote on, it's only 150 pages, which, I guess this is the stupidity of apparently some people, even on the right, who consider themselves influencers, because they're like, look, we won. We did this. We took a 1,500-page bill and we made it 150 pages. So, yeah, go us. And it's like, no, you're pretty stupid, because the 150-page bill actually would have raised the debt by anywhere from $4 to $7 trillion. And most of that was because of the debt ceiling. Now, I think we can all agree that Donald Trump is probably not somebody who gives a whole lot of credence to our national debt. He doesn't talk about it a whole lot. And when you're talking about raising the debt ceiling, there are some things behind the scenes that were promised to these lawmakers who met with Russ Vought and also met with J.D. Vance. And they talked about spending cuts that would offset some of this spending that was going to be incorporated in raising the debt ceiling. So it's like complicated politics, but all in all, Eric got to his vote when this bill came to the floor without the debt ceiling, and it was still just a bill that, wasn't a true clean CR. Eric has never voted for a continuing resolution. That is not the way the government is supposed to operate. Congress is supposed to pass 12 appropriations bills throughout the course of the year, the calendar year, to fund the government. And they don't do that. And then what ends up happening is they hold these people hostage, whether it's, we're going to shut the government down. It's going to be a communications crisis. Or guess what? You're not going to be able to go home and spend Christmas with your family unless you pass this massive omnibus bill. And Eric's not going to be bullied into making that decision. And unfortunately, right now, I think there's pressure on Speaker Mike Johnson, who might be a fine guy, but instead of going to a football game over the weekend, taking in Army-Navy, maybe he should have been talking with his fellow lawmakers to put together a bill that was actually America first and not something filled with pork.
Oh, all right. Now we're waking people up here on the day after Christmas. I love it. So, just for the benefit of the folks in the audience, and Eric, Congressman Burleson has been on News Talk STL. He's talked to our team many times. But just as a background, and I served with the congressman when he was back in the state Senate. There is different ways to grade the voting records of anybody who served in elective office. One of those that we use on the right side of the political spectrum is the American Conservative Union. And I can tell you that of 77 state senators that have been graded going back to 2010 by the American Conservative Union, Congressman Burleson has been rated number one of all of those for a conservative voting record. So we literally have in Missouri's 7th congressional district one of the most conservative voting members that we've ever had in elected office out of the Show Me state. And I know this because I'm actually number 2 on that list. See, that's a little self-plug right there. So I always like to look at the barometer of where Congressman Burleson is at on these issues to see, hey, how things are going, and he's a no vote. So now my question is, okay, this is going to get us to the spending bill is going to get us to about March 10th, which means we'll have a new president in office. What are the expectations that the congressman has about what that's going to look like here over the next 90 days?
Right. So over the next 90 days, I think it's going to be extremely vital that the GOP-led House works diligently on reconciliation bills, and there's talk that it might not just be one but two different variations of using reconciliation to get things in through a spending bill that will actually address some of our top issues. I mean, number one, border security, right? We need to begin the mass deportations. We need to finish the wall. We need to shore up the border, and we need to stop this illegal invasion. Secondly, we have to do something in regards to inflation. And so there are different measures that, things like, if you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, okay, that added billions and billions of dollars to our national debt. So all of these various massive bills that the Democrats have passed over the last 4 years, there are ways to deregulate much of the language in those bills to offset the cost on the American taxpayer. That's actually, these bills aren't doing anything for the American taxpayer. And it's funny how they disguise these bills, right? The Inflation Reduction Act. Well, what did that really do? It added money to the debt. The inflation went up. Anything in regards to the green energy scam going on through the Democrats. I mean, it's one thing after the next. And at some point, the funniest line, I believe, when Joe Biden took office 4 years ago was that the adults were back in the room. And I think many Americans have punched through that paper wall knowing what a facade it was.
It's in the excitement of this budget conversation, we didn't know when this passed and went through last week that we were about to be given another gift by the president-elect having to do with American expansion. And you know where I'm going with this. You know what's coming, because I got to ask this question. And that is, President-elect Trump tweeted out yesterday the possibility of Canada becoming the 51st state, of Greenland being purchased by America, and American taking over the Panama Canal. So, what from the congressman's office and perspective, I'd love to hear what's your reaction to that when you hear that the president talking about expanding America's borders in that manner.
I mean, I would be for it from a national security standpoint. I mean, it certainly gives you a much larger area. The Panama Canal, I'm not quite sure initially why we even sold that off. Wasn't that
was a Jimmy Carter thing? 77.
Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter gave it away. Maybe I'm going to talk. I have a whole monologue on this, but Jimmy Carter basically gave that away for nothing in 77. One of the most strategic shipping items anywhere on the planet. So yeah, that was a disaster that we gave it away, but now we did.
Right. So add that to the laundry list of why many people think Jimmy Carter was the worst president in American history. But thank goodness we have Joe Biden to plant him off that. But yeah, I mean, look, I don't know if some of these things that Trump puts out there are legitimate opportunities. But they're certainly fascinating, and maybe the best of anything he puts out there is just that the Trump derangement syndrome comes full head, and these people can't control themselves when they see anything that Trump puts out there. They go into complete lunatic mode.
Well, I said earlier on the show that if a referendum was put in front of the American people to accept Canada as the next state in the union, that I would vote for it. However, it occurs to me that I have to put a little caveat on that, because in order to make room for that population in the House of Representatives, we'd be giving up about 50 seats, and Missouri likely loses a congressional seat in that scenario. And my caveat would be that we can't lose the 7th congressional district. We cannot lose the 7th congressional district. We can't lose Congressman Burleson. So I want to make sure that may need to be spelled out in any treaty that we sign with our neighbors to the north if they want to consider the American experience. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, it does. And also, I mean, even when there's been talk about, making DC a state, or making, where it would just add essentially
a Democrat
to the delegation.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like usually they're the ones who are pushing this because they want to usurp power in any which way they possibly can. But if we can potentially grow, the Republican Party from that standpoint by having a bigger delegation, I'd be all for it. But yes, there's no way that we can get rid of Missouri's 7th congressional district, particularly because my boss is probably the most important.
He is the conscience
from Missouri.
He is the conscience of the Missouri delegation. He's the conscience of the Missouri delegation. So I was pleased to see that he took a no vote against that. So I think that was a great vote. And big year coming up, big expectations in 2025. What's Congressman Burleson's number one priority as we head into the new year?
I think the number one priority is just what Trump usually always says, which is we need America first lawmakers, we need America first policy, and we need to stop kowtowing to all of these foreign interests that use America for our economic prowess. It's embarrassing that we have so many elected officials who the first thing they do when they're running for a campaign is jump on the coattails of Donald Trump and talk about America first, and then they get into office and all of their voting record just screams America last. And so the faster that we can get on board with truly believing in an America first ideology, which begins with protecting our border. You don't have a country if you have a wide open border. You can't have 10+ million illegal aliens invade your country, spread throughout, given all these handouts, and suggest that you are still the world power. That is just absolutely ridiculous. So I think securing our border is first and foremost on the list for everybody. And then I think we need to have a serious conversation about, where this economy is going. Because you can look at the stock market, you look at various indicators of, say, a healthy economy. And right now, I think the American people are just feeling it from a lack of take-home pay. And so however we can sort of close the margin, because I don't know about you, Bill, but I think the idea that like Trump's going to assume office and prices are just going to somehow magically come down, I'm bullish on that. Maybe a little bit, but I don't know. Prices typically, historically, have not come down once they go up. So we have to figure out a way to grow the economy where people in the middle class, particularly, are actually getting wages that are, that are livable. And right now they're not. There's a huge divide. There were more billionaires created over the course of the COVID pandemic than in any, period in history in that flash. And I think the wealth gap right now between the political elite and the Hollywood elite and then your everyday Americans is just so beyond out of control that they have to do something to build the middle class back up in this country. They are the backbone. They are the people that work, in blue collar jobs. And quite frankly, they are the people that we need to have families and make our country sustainable. And right now that is a lost cause in our great nation.
Speaking of America last, did the spending bill include any Ukraine money? Do we know?
I don't believe, no. Speaker Johnson, before even the 1,500 page came out. Now, that was not even initially going to be the case. We're talking about Mike Johnson, who openly wears a lapel featuring the American flag and the Ukraine flag, as if, Ukraine is our greatest ally. It's embarrassing. So many in the GOP were happy to put on a Ukraine flag and bow with Ukraine because it's all in this great, attack on Russia. Most of these people couldn't even locate Ukraine on a map, and yet they're willing to give hundreds of billions of dollars of American taxpayer money to them, probably as a back pay for whatever the Biden crime family owes them.
And that's a good thing that it wasn't in there. Last question for you on the budget bill. How much money will we actually end up spending as a result of that bill between now and March 10th when it runs out? Do we know what the number is?
So just the cost, I'm running off numbers off the top of my head, but just the cost to run the government with a clean CR, I think was $314 million or $314 billion. It's a huge number. I think it's $314 million just to run the government alone until March 14th. Then you add in the disaster aid package, you add in the farm bill stuff. And here's one other thing, this is so disturbing, but it happens. And you'll get this because you know how the political game works. But they'll use a concept like the farm bill, right? And if you vote against it, it'll be like, oh, you hate agriculture. You hate America's farmers, which we have great farmers here in the state of Missouri. And they supply many of our nation with all sorts of different crops. every single farmer that you ask if they actually benefit from most of the things that are in these quote unquote farm bills, it's such a farce. It doesn't trickle down to the actual farmer who's had a farm under their family's name for hundreds of years. That is not the case. These farm bills are loaded with big time payouts to some of our most, corporate companies that sure supply a lot of food, but to suggest that would actually that trickle down is going into the hands of hardworking farmers in the state of Missouri is just such nonsense. And yet they will message on the idea, if you vote against something like the farm bill, then you're attacking Missouri's farmers. And that's typical of Democrats. They have no other messaging other than to attack people and their lack of, pure just knowledge of what's in a bill. And they use it as a communications attack, which is really just disgusting. These are disgusting people. And I hate to say that on the, day after Christmas, but I think we've seen where their true colors lie, and they're not in your best interests.
Well, Nate, I appreciate it so much. It's great to talk to you. Wish you a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Please pass on our well wishes to the congressman, and we'll look forward to talking to you again in 2025.
I will do that, Bill. It's been a pleasure. Just so you know, you had my vote, and I wish you were, on the way to to the governorship. But God bless you and your family, and thank you so much for the conversation today.
Awesome. We'll talk soon. All right. That was Nate Lucas. He's from Congressman Eric Burleson's office, our most conservative member of our congressional delegation. Okay, we got to take a break. When we come back, I promised you a Theodore Roosevelt quote about American expansion. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Greenland. It's going to be a great time. If you'd like to call in, don't hesitate to call in 314-912-1019. We're going to take a break. You're listening to News Talk STL. I'm Bill Eigel in for Vic Porcelli. We'll be right back.
Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
The Vic Porcelli Show. Like and subscribe to us on Rumble. News Talk STL.
Many people think Jimmy Carter was the worst president in American history, but thank goodness we have Joe Biden.
You know what? A great career awaits you, or maybe one of your kids, or both of your kids, or all your kids, or if you're really old like me, maybe some of your grandchildren might look for a great career. How about the United States Air Force and Space Force? Ask the host of the show today, Senator Bill Eigel. He is a veteran of the Air Force, as his wife is, and they say the food is great, by the way. We're talking about food. You got me. So competitive salary, education opportunities, 30 days of vacation, tax-free food, clothing, and housing. You can travel overseas, live and work overseas, and there's over 200 careers for you to choose from. So get on the horn with Staff Sergeant Jeremy Jefferson. His number is 314-295-6834. That's 314-295-6834. Give us a call now and tell Bill Eigel, ask Bill Eigel how great the Air Force is. He'll tell you, working at the Air Force or Space Force.
You can't get food like this in Paris. Bring the family for breakfast and brunch to Nadine's Hash House, offering home-style cooked meals the way your mother made them. Try the savory Southside Slinger, the cinnamon streusel pancakes, or Nadine's famous hash. Make sure to follow Nadine's Hash House on Facebook for weekly specials. Open today from 7 to 1:30 in Soulard on Broadway. Nadine's Hash House. You can't get food like this in Paris. Nadine'sHashHouse.com.
Larry Connors here. I'm heading to southern Italy on a tour of the most beautiful coastline in the world, the Amalfi Coast. 11 magical days in luxury with professionals from Conservative Tours. The cost, $54.88. That includes airfare from St. Louis. Call 888-733-9494 or go to conservativetours.com. Let's go to Italy this spring. conservativetours.com.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down.
get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad Pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
Paid for by Estella's Pharma.
The Almond Report.
Hey, Thursday on the Almond Report, we're back from the Christmas holiday with all the craziness from over the Christmas holiday. It's Almond Report, News Talk STL.
Jamie Allman, weeknights at 8 on News Talk STL. The Vic Porcelli Show. Made in St. Louis for St. Louis. It's News Talk STL. Like and subscribe to us on Rumble. News Talk STL.
You're very good. You are very good.
Hey, good morning, St. Louis. Merry belated Christmas to you. I'm Bill Eigel, filling in for Vic Porcelli this morning. The day after Christmas, we're waking up. You know, Jerome, I can't believe this. I've made it through an hour and a half, and I haven't talked about state politics at all. I can't believe that.
Yeah,
I mean, I thought that, I think people, I thought naturally if I'm going to talk for 2 hours on politics, I would have a lot of state stuff, but I haven't done any state stuff.
I mean, if there's anybody in this office right now qualified to talk about what's going on in St. Louis, you would think it's the guy that's hosting the show right now.
But here I am talking about national politics, and it's just because the cornucopia of a tweet that Donald Trump made yesterday made my life so much easier when he said American expansion is going to take place, or potentially is going to take place. And we've hit all the bases. We've talked about the budget. I'm done talking about the federal budget for today. Don't worry. We've talked about Canada. I'm not talking about Canada anymore. We got to hit the next one. But all these different subjects, as we move into our last half hour, all these different subjects have to do with American expansion, you know, whether it's Canada, Greenland, the Panama Canal. And the last great advocate for American expansion in terms of actually, you know, furthering our borders was our former president, Theodore Roosevelt. He was a huge proponent of the expansion of America. Do you know anything about Theodore Roosevelt, Jerome? How much do you know about Theodore? Teddy Roosevelt.
I know teddy bears are named after him, and that he was very big on like national parks and nature preservation. He was a very manly man. He's the one that got shot and continued to give a speech, right? Yeah,
that's right. That's right. I mean,
true American.
And he was very aggressive about expanding American borders. And he had this quote. This quote is from President Teddy Roosevelt on American expansion. He said, "Every expansion of civilization makes for peace." In other words, every expansion of a great civilized power means a victory for law, order, and righteousness. It is only the warlike power of a civilized people that can give peace to the world.
Wow.
So, I mean, think about that for a second. What he's saying there is you take an America, bringing more folks into the American experiment is effectively good for the world. As America's borders expand, peace across the globe expands as well. I mean, if you look at the North American continent, just wherever you're, I believe that America is the greatest country on earth, but wherever you fall on that spectrum, think about the North American continent and the lack of sovereign major military conflict. Not that we don't have problems. We have obviously huge crime problems in our cities. We've got the cartel problem, the border crisis. It's not that we don't have problems, but if you look at it from a relative perspective, from major military conflicts relative to regions like the Middle East, relative to regions like the Indo-Pacific regions, the level of conflict is far lower. And the only reason we have problems in whether it's in our urban areas or even border issues is because of the politicians and elected leaders in those areas are deviating from American ideals in the first place. So I agree with Teddy Roosevelt's basic premise that an expansion of a major civilized power like the United States, by expanding specifically their territorial borders, brings peace further and further around the globe. I agree with that. And it's not that I wouldn't have reservations in the event that Canada wanted to apply for statehood, but ultimately I am a supporter of that. Now, I also think that there are examples where statehood doesn't make sense for certain territories. The District of Columbia in Washington, D.C., which is viewed from the Democratic Party as exclusively a partisan calculation. No, I do not think that statehood makes sense when it's exclusively a partisan calculation by that. So I want to be very clear about that. But expanding our borders, I think, is generally a good thing. And based on our conversation with Nate out of Congressman Burles's office, I think we're 3-0 on votes for Canada. Is it, Jerome? Did you pick that up?
Yeah, I think I got the same sentiment from him. Now, I want to kind of go on the same thing. Instead of expanding outwards, how about splitting up states? So like with California, if we split into Northern California and Southern California, New York potentially splitting up the boroughs, how would you feel about that?
Well, I tell you what, I wouldn't ever be opposed to any plan that splits up California. But where this is actually going on is in Oregon and Idaho. Have you heard the Greater Idaho Project, where the eastern counties in the state of Oregon have already voted to secede from Oregon and join Idaho? I'm pretty sure it's called the Greater Idaho Project, because they're trying to align it. Eastern Oregon is far more rural, far more conservative, very red, actually, outside the coastal areas of the state that dominate their political makeup. And these counties are so disillusioned with their liberal Democrat leadership. It's very similar to kind of South and Southwestern Illinois, where they're so different, have such a different perspective on where they want their state to go. They would like to join a state that reflects more their values, which in this case is the state of Idaho. So yeah, that conversation is good. We have, the folks in St. Louis City, or at least some folks in St. Louis City, want to join with St. Louis County, right? And they want the whole state to vote on that, which is a whole different problem. So yeah, these different conversations about combining or splitting, I think there's a lot of merit to a lot of them. It's difficult. I will say it's difficult to make long-term decisions about realignment like that for present-term political problems. For example, take the state of California. Well, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, California was a very red state, right? So the demographics today that we see in California, which, let's be honest, they're not great, may not be the same as they will be in 40 years from now. So, 40 years from now, who knows? Maybe California is going to get so tired of the disaster that's gone on that they're going to start becoming red again. So it's, keep that in mind when we talk about, Canada and these other different territories. What they look like today may not necessarily be what they look like. We see a lot of these political parties at the Democratic Party, and even to a degree the Republican Party, they will exchange some of their principles over the long term. The Democratic Party today looks far different than it did 40 years ago, and enormously different from where it looked in the Civil War. So it is there's a lot of moving pieces there, but I'm very open to all of those conversations. But let's talk for a second. Consider, if you will, the idea of Greenland as an American protectorate. What are the possibilities of Greenland being an American protectorate? First of all, when Trump sent his tweet out, the prime minister of Greenland already came out and said, "We are not for sale." He declared, "We are not for sale." Well, that's not exactly true, because even though when Trump first announced it in 2019 as an idea, it turns out that Greenland gets a big chunk of their annual operating budget from the country of Denmark. How much do they get from the country of Denmark? They get about $574 million in subsidy for the 50,000 people that live in Greenland from the country of Denmark. It makes up 50% of their annual budget, and 20% of their total GDP comes from the subsidy they get from Denmark.
Wow.
So when the Greenland prime minister declares that they are not for sale, actually, you are for sale, because you're getting 20% of your GDP from a government subsidy in another country. That's pretty close to being for sale. I'm just saying. To put that in perspective, $574 million is less than half the annual budget of the city of St. Louis.
Wow.
So Greenland is looking at foreign actors for a lot of reliance. And what do they offer? Well, they have strategic dominance. We already have Thule Air Force Base, which got renamed recently to Pituffik Space Base. I don't know where that came from. That already houses American radar and American radar sites for our missile defense silos on the North American continent. It represents the shortest path from the United States to Europe, and it has mostly untapped natural resources available for ripe development. I mean, I'm a big baby drill kind of guy. I think that could be very productive up in the northern reaches of Greenland.
I mean, if Trump buys it and just switches the name from Greenland to Iceland and renames them based on how they actually look, I think that would be
Glacier
totally
Land.
Yeah,
it'd be like Glacier Land. That was a good point. Karen said that earlier. It's like, hey, Iceland is actually green. Greenland is actually ice. So Greenland may be next on the stop. But I tell you what, we're already back at another break. And when we come back, my goodness, the 2 hours is just flying by. It's almost like I love to talk. And I'm so thankful that you all are out there spending a portion of your day after Christmas morning with us. Don't forget to call in. We're still looking for someone to call in and weigh in on what they'd like to be the 51st state. 314-912-1019. I'm Bill Eigel filling in for Vic Porcelli. You're listening to News Talk STL, news, analysis, opinion. We'll be right back.
It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business.
St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
What citizen wouldn't want to make America great again?
Live and local.
You lose your Dixon notch. Yeah. You lost America. I saw it etched on a coin somewhere.
This is News Talk STL.
Hope you had a great holiday. Hope you had a great Christmas, right? The kids are all taken care of. They're all happy. Matter of fact, today they may be out playing somewhere, right? Or maybe having a sleepover at one of their friends. That's perfect. House is empty for you and your husband or you and your wife, depending upon which one you are. And Dr. John's knows how to make that night and many nights in the future a lot more fun. There's 3 locations of Dr. John's: Fenton, Farmington, and Wood River, Illinois. And they have everything you need. Now, here's the thing, right? You walk into a store like Dr. John's, you would think, oh, God, I'm going to be so uncomfortable walking into the store with all these videos and lubes and things. No, they'll make you feel comfortable. They're knowledgeable, and they'll know how to help you have a good time, if you know what I mean. So go to Dr. John's, make an appointment to see the doctor in Fenton, Farmington, or Wood River, Illinois. Just walk in, okay? And tell them News Talk STL sent you when you visit Dr. John's. Again, those 3 locations, Fenton, Farmington, and Wood River, Illinois.
Hello, this is Jay with Titan Hill Armory in Washington, Missouri. We are a small family-owned business specializing in firearms and accessories. We buy, sell, and trade and have over 2,000 firearms in our store. We're open Wednesday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Check us out at 1807 East 5th Street or online at TitanHillArmory.com.
Titan Hill Armory, your source for firearms, ammunition, accessories in Washington, Missouri.
Again, that's TitanHillArmory.com.
Tony Colombo here for the cleaning pros at Zero Res, the team we trust with keeping our home clean and healthy. And the folks at Zero Res know how important it is to you to have a clean, healthy home this holiday season. And that's why they have this great offer for you right now. Book a cleaning with Zero Res and mention the Colombo special, and you'll get 3 rooms of carpet cleaned starting at just $129. Plus, you can take $75 off an air duct cleaning. Again, just mention the Colombo special when you call 314-474-2020 or when you book online at ZeroResSTL.com.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural
Fox
Health.
News commentary.
Joe Biden has done a lot of damage the last 4 years, but he did one thing right when it comes to one of our nation's proudest symbols. I'm Tommy Lahren. Find out next.
Why pay more for prescriptions? Stop overpaying and start saving with SingleCare. It's easy. Find your prescription on SingleCare.com. Show the coupon at the pharmacy and start saving. SingleCare works at pharmacies nationwide and is completely free to use, whether you have insurance or not. So the next time you fill a prescription, check SingleCare to make sure you're getting the best price. Take control of your prescription costs. Go to SingleCare.com or download the free app today.
Moments of bipartisanship are rare, and so are things done by Joe that aren't complete disasters. So in the holiday spirit, here's something that satisfies both of those rarities. President Biden signed a bill officially designating the bald eagle as our national bird. The bill itself passed Congress unanimously, which is great news. I, for one, thought the bald eagle was already our national bird since it's been on our Great Seal since 1782, carries its own holiday, is designated the national emblem, and has its own protection act, but apparently it's never technically been deemed with the title. But now, the bald eagle has made its official debut as our national bird with this amendment to Title 36 of the U.S. Code. I'm glad that even though we have a very divided Congress and an absentee president in the White House, this important and historic move was etched into our proud history. I'm Tommy Lahren, and you can watch my show, Tommy Lahren is Fearless, at Outkick.com.
This hour, The Vic Porcelli Show, brought to you by Proctor Drapery Blinds and Shutters. Proctor, spelled like doctor. ProctorDrapery.com. You're listening to The Vic Porcelli Show. Made in St. Louis, for St. Louis. It's News Talk STL.
You're funny. Well, I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown. I amuse you. I make you laugh. What do you mean funny?
Hey, welcome back, St. Louis. I'm Bill Eigel, filling in for Vic Porcelli and the Vic Porcelli Show. We're in our final segment of the morning. Man, that went by fast. It's almost like I like to talk. And so glad you are spending a portion of your after Christmas time with us here. We've had talking about American expansion. We're talking about budget issues. We have a lot to talk. We've had a lot on our minds, but I'm thankful so much that you've joined us here on News Talk STL this morning. We've had a great time, and we've got a caller on the line that wants to talk a little bit further about Canada. And I can always judge if we're really getting a reaction from folks if people call in. So I'm thrilled that we have somebody call in, and we have apparently Willie on the line. Willie, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I am here.
All right. What do you think? Should we make Canada our 51st state? Hit me.
I have questions about it. I think it would be a great idea on one condition.
Okay.
Their gun control idea is a lot different than ours. You cannot take a semi-automatic firearm into Canada.
Yes.
The other thing that bothers me about it is you have two different lifestyles up there. You have the French Canadian and you have the English Canadian. They think differently. No, but I mean, it's nothing that doesn't happen over here. Look at us and the liberals. Canada would have a lot of pluses on their side as far as coming into the U.S. Like you say, cutting down their taxes. But there's also another thing that I was thinking about. We talked about taking back over the Panama Canal. Why don't we not build a wall and just invite Mexico into this fray and give them jobs in their own country? We already have factories and everything else over there that's getting tax cuts. We can make them pay their fair share and still give these people a job in their own country.
Wow. I tell you what, you said you've opened up some very interesting concepts there. And actually, so the first thing that you mentioned is the idea of gun control in Canada. Now, the process of becoming a state, the territory, they would have to be a territory for a while. Then they would have to submit a constitution to the U.S. Congress that would be approved by Congress. And it would be subject to the federal constitution, which already articulates our right to bear arms. So to your point, the Canada would have to understand that all citizens of America have an articulated fundamental right that I believe they get from God to keep and bear arms. So yeah, that's a go no go item that they have to understand, because our court system would be very aggressive about likely striking down laws that they would try to put in place to the contrary. So that goes without saying. And it's interesting you mentioned the French Canadians. Now, the French-speaking Canadians make up about 20% of Canada's population. So 20%, you're talking about 7 or 8 million individuals that have French as their first language. Compare that to America. In America, 13% of the American population has Spanish as their first language. So we actually already have a relatively significant portion of the American public that actually has a language other than English as their first language, and I think that makes assimilation into the American melting pot a lot more difficult. But it has happened, and there is a track record here in the United States. The other thing that you brought up, Willie, about Mexico becoming part of the greater North American United States is very interesting because instead of having a border wall, instead of people coming across the border, you're proposing moving the border across people. So the border going further south and bringing those people into the American sphere and the American territory. I think I'm going to make a prediction that over the next 10 to 15 years, that very conversation about moving our border further south, instead of trying to constantly maintain what has been a very porous border, not because we don't have the materials to build a border wall, but because we have a very porous political system that seems to struggle to make a border. I think over the next 10 or 15 years, that conversation about moving the border south is going to become more and more relevant. We're going to have guys like Eric Burleson up there in Washington, D.C. have that conversation. So great conversations. But do I understand you correctly that if there were a referendum to whether or not to accept Canada, you would vote yes to Canada as the 51st state?
I would.
All right. There we go. It's been unanimous on the show today.
4 for 4.
Thank you so.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
You had my vote for governor.
Thank you, Willie. More to come, man.
One.
I am thankful and grateful to each and every one of my supporters. More to come, I promise. Willie, thanks so much for taking a few minutes to talk to us this morning.
Whoosh.
All right. There he goes. All right. It's been a great morning.
Whoosh.
We're 4-0 on votes for Canada as a 51st state.
Yeah, and I'm glad he brought up Mexico, because that's been something on my mind as well. In theory, if we were to negotiate having them somehow become part of the United States, we could then use emergency powers and declare it a national emergency, use the National Guard to clear out and to use lawful military force without having to declare war.
Yep.
And then we could push the border even further to the peninsulas where a lot of these people are coming up from.
Yep.
So how do you feel about maybe making Mexico the 51st state?
So the dynamic with Mexico is that I see the Mexican government as a failed state.
Mm-hmm.
The Mexican government is so overridden by the corruption and driven by the drug cartels that are operating out of Mexico that the Mexican government per se is a failed state. And because it is a failed state, integrating that into the United States is a much different prospect than when we talk about Canada.
Okay.
Canada, for our political differences, we talked about socializing, and yes, they're accepting the American Constitution is a no-go item for anyone considering statehood. If Canada were saying yes to that question, which is the caveat that Willie gave us, then the process of unification between the United States and Canada, I think, is a relatively straightforward process. Not that it doesn't have pitfalls and there's not going to be administratively things to work out, but it's pretty straightforward. In the case of Mexico, the Mexican government is a failed state. And so you actually mentioned it, that I believe there would actually have to be lawful military action to remove the cartels from power that are operating on Mexican soil and American soil, but on Mexican soil to pave the way for a future introduction of Mexico as a territory. So I think that functionally speaking, if we started moving down that road, I think that you look at Mexico as a U.S. territory for probably a longer period of time, while those things are managed and put into place, and the influence of the cartels have to be eliminated. And quite frankly, if we're being honest about this, even if we put up a successful border wall, that the cartels are still operating on Mexican soil. Mm-hmm. And they're still going to be looking to funnel illegal immigrants and drugs into America that will harm American communities and kill American citizens. So the reality that hundreds of thousands of Americans have already been killed indicates that the rational, logical decision is that the United States must take action. Diplomatically, certainly, but at some point, the Mexican cartels are trying to kill American citizens, and they must be responded to in kind. And it could very well be a solution, to your point, that involves Mexico eventually becoming a U.S. territory and potentially a U.S. state. So it's a much different conversation. However, it would create the combination of those three countries, Mexico, Canada, and the United States, would create we're already the global superpower, but would put the North American continent so far ahead of any other continent on the planet that it's really an intriguing opportunity for the American experiment.
I think that's an absolutely very balanced and very realistic take on that. So when it comes to Canada, just to go back to Canada for a moment, or even Greenland, pick a country, in terms of what would happen to the currency, are we thinking about they would have to adapt to the USD? Would we kind of do what the European? Okay, so we're not thinking about getting a new. No.
Nope. And actually, and the reason I say that, it's a really good question. The reason I say that it has to be the American dollar. So is it Mexico's the peso?
Yes.
And Canada's the Canadian dollar, right?
Yes.
Those would have to go away because the global dominance of the American dollar is not something that really leaves room for other currencies or gives us any flexibility to create a new currency. So especially with the current American governmental system completely based on the dominance of that dollar internationally, there would be no flexibility to entertain the notion of a peso or one of the other currencies. They would have to get onto American dollars, and that would also be kind of that's a go no go. Every other state that has joined the union has accepted and adopted the U.S. dollar as currency.
But would that do anything for inflation? Because you would then probably have to print a lot of currency, then have it traded in, and now you have this currency that's no longer going to be valid because they became a state. So how would that really affect our economy?
Well, there's enough dollars in circulation right now because we've so dramatically increased the number of dollars that adding 10% to the population from Canada and adding an additional amount of the population from Mexico, we've got plenty of dollars out there. And so you're right, there would have to be an exchange for the Mexican dollar. And I don't know off the top of my head how many Mexican pesos are in circulation, nor do I have any idea of how many Canadian dollars. But yeah, there is going to have to be an exchange rate that's worked out so that the wealth of every Canadian and Mexican citizen does not disappear overnight. So yes, that's a conversation. That's part of the details, and we'll have to work that out. But no, we have to make the move towards the American dollar in all three of those countries. And actually, there are many places that already accept the dollar in those countries as for private transactions. It's kind of like when you go to if you've ever taken a vacation to some of the tourist spots in the Mexican coast or even Canada, that a lot of them will just take American dollars already.
Wow.
So it is a challenge. We saw some of the challenges when we saw the euro take over several currencies over in the European continent, but it can be done. And I think just the strength and status of the American dollar preempts any discussion about that we would maintain either of those currencies. Very exciting.
Very good economics lesson.
Who knew that 48 hours ago, this is what we were going to be talking about? I mean, when I wrote up my show plan on Christmas Eve, see, I was working on Christmas Eve, everybody, just so you know. When we were working on the show plan, I had no idea that Donald Trump was about to deliver a huge gift for us to talk about and occupy the entire show, but it's been great. I tell you what, we just got a couple minutes left. I want to take a minute and say, as we move into 2025, I want to say thank you to everybody here across the state of Missouri. Obviously, I had a very public year with the run for governor and got a chance to visit places in Missouri and meet people that I had never gotten a chance to visit before and talk to. And that was fantastic. I used to say in the campaign, one of the best things about running for governor is that I now know in every small town in Missouri, I know a great place to go eat. Small towns that I was visiting small towns that I admit I had never even heard of before because we were traveling every day on the road. We put 150,000 miles on the highways. It's a big state. You don't realize it. And just the genuine goodness of folks all over the state. I am incredibly grateful for all the support. We had a couple people mention it this morning. I'm incredibly grateful for all the support, for my family that supported me throughout that. And 2025 is going to be a big year. We didn't really get a chance to talk about Missouri politics. Maybe we'll have that opportunity, but there's when I think of 2025 and the political realm, Washington, D.C. and the state of Missouri, and even locally, the word I think of is expectations. We have huge expectations. We have huge expectations for the federal government. We have a new president coming in. And in a way, the theme of Donald Trump at the federal level was reform and change, right? Remember that word change? Remember the last election the word change was used in? It was used in 2008. And look what kind of coalition people already are building for that. So that mentality of fixing all this broken government, huge expectations. In Jefferson City, we're going to have a new governor. We're going to have a new legislature. And they have big expectations too, because they don't have a lot to show for a lot of the politicking that was been done down in Jefferson City for the past 2 years. So my hopes and prayers are with all of them. My gratitude are with Republicans and independents and even some Democrats all over the state of Missouri for the support I received and for the fact that we're all pushing for the Show Me State. Jerome, it's been fantastic. Thanks so much for having me this morning. I'm Bill Eigel. I'm filling in for Vic Porcelli. You are listening to News Talk STL. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas and a happy holiday. We'll talk to you real soon right here on News Talk STL. News, analysis, and opinion. Have a great morning, everybody.
Make sure you have the record player on at night.
Hey, want to amaze your friends when they visit? They will be impressed when they see your custom-made drapes, blinds, or shutters. Michael Proctor will personally help you pick out the correct colors to truly showcase your home. Then he will actually design and